Good morning, I'm Nikki and I'm here today at the Udder House in South Kensington to launch the Giant Leap podcast in conversations with, and I'll be speaking to leading luminaries from the luxury and finance marketing sector, and we'll be finding out how the current landscape of social, technological, economic and political upheaval is affecting our industry today. Let's go inside and have a look.
I'm Kay Carmichael, a luxury and fashion marketing consultant specializing in sustainability.
Hello and welcome to the Giant Leap podcast in conversations with. And I'm Nikki McMorrow and I'm here with Kaye Carmichael, who is a literal who's who of luxury marketing. Kaye, you've been at Mulberry, Chanel, Net-a-Porter and so many more. Would you like to just give yourself a little introduction?
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much for having me today. So yes, I'm Kay Carmichael, a luxury and fashion marketing consultant specializing now in sustainability communications. As you mentioned previously, in my career, I've worked for brands and retailers, including Mulberry, Michael Kors, Chanel I worked with when I was based in Paris doing my MBA. Also, most recently, I was the head of marketing for Net-a-Porter and Mr. Porter and worked with other retailers like Harrods and Bicester Village. And so, my background and experience has always been within marketing communications, really understanding that luxury consumer. And then over the past few years, I've really shifted my focus to work on sustainability communications and messaging, still within the luxury and fashion industry.
Perfect. So that is really interesting because as you know, these podcasts are very much about the audiences that consume these luxury products. But as audiences get more and more into wanting to know the full cycle of their product, it's good to know that we have someone like you making stewarding the brand through the same journey. What does it kind of entail on a daily basis?
Yeah, so sustainability is such a huge topic, and particularly within fashion and luxury, a lot of the sustainability roles are very much focused on how we make the products, so the supply chain, the materials that are selected. But with my background and experience being in marketing communications, that's really the lens that I bring to the work that I do. So understanding our luxury customer and understanding brand building, long-term brand building. And as you said, sustainability is an increasingly important area that's on people's radars. Hopefully, everyone's well aware of the kind of climate impact, the climate crisis that we're in at the moment. But the fashion industry as a whole is, it's estimated to be up to 10% of carbon emissions globally. That's not luxury specifically, that is the fashion industry as a whole, but it's the third most polluting industry behind agriculture and energy. So that really does go to show that we have a very large impact as an industry, and increasingly brands are therefore working to be more responsible, looking at how they can operate and manufacture and produce their products better. But as I mentioned, with my background being in marketing communications, the skill set and what I can do to help build that journey and that narrative for customers is building brand campaigns, building brand messages, brand marketing, and using, I guess, the cultural influence that the industry has to help shape a more sustainable industry. So that really does involve working with clients, on brand campaigns, on looking at our product selection and what products we're offering that are more considered, and bringing that idea of circular services, so care and repair, rental, pre-loved to customers. So really helping us kind of from a cultural perspective, look at what the luxury and fashion industry can be from a more sustainable perspective.
You're looking very stylish today, I must say.
Thank you, I try.
Are there some circular items in your wardrobe today, or?
So yes, so my jeans are from Totem, which is a brand that is actually B Corp certified, which is fantastic to see because you have to go through a lot of rigorous information sharing around your business practices and your sourcing. So Totem recently became B Corp certified. My blouse is actually Michael Kors and is 10 years old. So that in itself, I think these days counts as being revolutionary.
How very Kate Middleton of you.
You know, right. I would like to hasten to add, I don't actually think owning a shirt in the 10 years is that much of a statement, but in the era of fast fashion, ultra fast fashion, and people disposing of clothes very quickly, the most sustainable thing you have is what's already in your wardrobe. So that's kind of the point that I'm making, that, you know, timeless fashion, keeping your things and wearing them for a long time really is actually a great step forward.
It is. So is that the one thing we can do that makes the biggest impact?
Yes. First and foremost, as a marketeer, obviously goes against the grain, but don't buy anything new. You really should be looking at what you've already got in your wardrobe and wearing that.
And making up some new outfits to go with it all.
Yes, exactly. My mum always loves to say, I'm going to shop my wardrobe. And I'm like, yes, exactly. That's a great way to look at it. You know, I appreciate, I've been in the industry a long time. I have accumulated a wardrobe. I am a hoarder. So it's very easy for me to shop my wardrobe. Whereas if you're a minimalist Marie Kondo type, maybe you can't all the time. But yes, ultimately, the most sustainable choice you can make.
You can tidy out your wardrobe, but give it to charity or sell it.
Absolutely.
And, you know, trade it in for something else. I think there's lots of different ways you can go about that.
Definitely. And I think, so touched on a little bit earlier about how circularity is something I really want to champion and help customers understand more. And exactly that, buying pre-loved, selling on Vestiaire, selling on Vinted, selling on whatever kind of pre-loved platform that you engage with, donating to charity shops, giving to your friends, swapping with your friends. These are all fantastic ways to actually enjoy the clothes that exist already instead of always having to look for newness. Being new to me can also be new.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that, actually. Need to use that more often.
Yes, exactly. And I think
new slogan for the new circular campaign.
Exactly. And I think, mentioned earlier the kind of cultural influence that we have as marketeers, as the fashion industry, and, simple use of language like calling something vintage or pre-loved or secondhand. They mean the same thing, but they have very different perceptions. So how do we, as an industry, actually celebrate existing product and that kind of the value that's held in those products long term?
I absolutely love the term pre-loved as well, because it really is about perception. Like, to someone else, it was unwanted.
Yeah.
But to you, it's pre-loved, it's new. And, somebody else chose it in the first place. Maybe they didn't use it much, but it's a great opportunity.
Yeah. And actually, so I do some volunteering at the Royal Trinity Hospice charity shops. And I was talking to their retail director, who was saying how, from his perspective, actually luxury shopping and shopping in charity shop has quite a lot in common from an experience perspective, because you really have to search for special pieces that there's not always, and they become something that's more unique versus if you go into a Primark, you go into a Zara, there's lots and lots of selection in the different sizes and multiple colorways, etc. So actually shopping pre-loved can be a more special, unique, individual experience when it comes to retail.
What prompted your move into sustainability after all these years, at the front end of the brand? What was the trigger?
Yeah, so for me, I was, focused on marketing, communications, and been working in the industry for 10 years or so for some fantastic brands and really believing in the products that I was selling. But the repetition of constantly selling newness and constantly offering up as this is the new must-have bag, and then a couple of months later coming back saying, oh no, this now is the new thing you must own, started to feel obviously a little bit disingenuous, and it started to feel, started to question essentially, how can we constantly be talking about newness? And then I started doing my own homework, my own research, looking into the impact of the fashion industry. And that is, where I discovered and understood more around what a large impact it has on the climate perspective, how unfortunately from a people perspective, there's also a lot of exploitation that happens within the supply chains. And that really just inspired me to think, well, I work in this industry and I didn't understand this information. How is a customer supposed to know or understand this information and therefore make more informed, better choices around what they're buying? And so that's really what steered me to focus on that area and on that work. So yeah, it was a lot of home research, a lot of personal research, going to talks. And then I, thankfully during COVID, when I had a bit of time on my hands, we were all home, I did the Cambridge Institute of Sustainability Leadership course in business sustainability management, which was fantastic to really give an overarching kind of grounding in sustainability from all different angles. It wasn't specifically focused on luxury or fashion, but it really was a very broad grounding in the area, talking a lot about kind of linear business models, how we should be moving to circularity, the environmental crisis that we're in, and these really, really key important ideas to develop and understand. And through that, I was able to build a really strong network of people. So the course does a really good job of connecting alumni And so out of that, I have a nice, really strong fashion network of people who have done the course, who now work in all different areas of the industry. And it's a great way to kind of share ideas. Fashion and luxury is such a large, complicated industry, many different areas. And so it's great that, I am somebody who has that understanding from marketing communications, as you say, kind of front end customer facing perspective. But within the group, we also have Deepa Hingori, who works on supply chains and material sourcing, so the production side of sustainability. There is Melanie Hughes, who has her own PR company that works on the kind of combination of tech, sustainability and fashion. So, for example, she worked with Good On You and represents them in their communications. Rachel Arthur, who works for YNAP, so very much in that kind of thought leadership area in looking at how we can be shaping our marketing communications. Sarah Angold, who is a designer by background, but actually now, post the course, has gone on to develop a fibre made of banana waste that is turned into a material that can be made into clothes. So a really fantastic mix of people who've brought to life different areas and working really hard in different areas of the industry on making it more sustainable and stronger in the future.
They sound like a cool bunch of ladies, I have to say.
They are a very cool bunch.
Funny that it's all ladies.
Yes, it is. It is all ladies.
It's all ladies.
And that generally has been my experience of fashion for the most part, actually. That's a very, very female environment, which I really love. Though I do question why often the more senior roles are held by men. I'm not sure where they come from out of the blue, but that's my feminist perspective on things.
Well, it's always good to have an amazing support network, isn't it? In fact, that's your current network. But I'm fascinated to know whether there were any important people in your early journey in fashion, or your early forays into sustainability. There's usually a mentor or a person who facilitates a move. Is there anyone who springs to mind?
I think I've been really fortunate throughout my career to work with a lot of incredible people, but actually definitely somebody who I very much view as a mentor is my second role when I was working at a creative agency. Her name's Hayley Richardson, and she just really inspired me, really encouraged me. She gave me a lot of space to really run with things. So working in a small boutique design agency called Eagle Nick and Webb, and I was the account manager and she was a studio director, and then everyone else in this agency, there was about 10 of us, were creatives. And we worked with clients that ranged from House of Holland and Matches Fashion to British Land, so a real mix of kind of fashion as well as some residential properties as well. But what I really loved about working with Hayley was that I learned a lot about how to manage people, how to connect with people, how to inspire people. And still to this day, we're very close. And whenever I think, what should I do? I do think, what would Hayley do in this situation?
You've got to have one of those people.
Exactly.
Beyonce has one.
Who's Beyonce?
She's called Sasha Fierce. It's an imaginary person. But before she goes on stage, she says, what would Sasha do? And sustainability is, it's been around for a while, but us humans have only just started to get our teeth into it. So you're kind of forging a new path. It's not like there's a playbook that you can all follow. So it must be quite important for your current network to have each other.
Absolutely. And interesting enough, actually, so Rachel Arthur, I mentioned, I'm within this Cambridge Institute of Sustainability Leadership group with. We actually knew each other from before. She created this fantastic network called Fashmash with Rosanna Falconer, which at the time was focused on fashion and digital back in kind of 2010. And it was looking at, how does fashion and luxury deal with the digital revolution? What do we do in this digital space? How do we embrace this innovation and huge change that is coming for the industry? And again, that was actually a network of all women who wanted to come together to discuss ideas and to share, right? We were all working at different brands. At the time I was at Mulberry, and we just wanted to have a space to say, like, we're approaching this like this. What are you doing? How are you looking at, what is this new social media platform? Are you going to look at embracing it or not? Simple things like that, because let's not forget, in 2010, Instagram didn't exist. So all of this has happened very quickly for us to deal with. And so kind of out of that network is when Rachel and I connected. And then when sustainability is now a kind of similar landscape, whereas there's this big change, that businesses are having to adapt to, evolve, decide how they're going to approach it. And so a lot of, I guess, the similar kind of approaches, ways of thinking and community collaboration is needed for us as an industry to really look at how do we develop solutions, move our businesses forward, adapt to being more sustainable businesses, because we need to do it really quickly.
But elegantly as well, of course. Everything has to be done like a graceful swan. So
yes,
all
exactly.
your network is scrabbling around, under the surface, trying to figure out how it's going to work.
I know. I think that's how luxury marketing always works. I always think once you leave a brand, you're like, oh wow, that looks great from the outside, and then you remember what it was like on the inside.
Absolutely. So moving on to the kind of where we are now. You've had a little bit about the backstory. What's your current mission?
So yes, I always kind of build out what I'm focused on doing now in terms of driving positive change in the industry. So of course, there's a really large part of the sustainability element that is environmental, but then there's also a very large people element to that too. So driving positive change in terms of what are we offering from a product perspective, how are we making our product better, but then how are we also making sure that there's diversity, equity and inclusion within the industry, within the people that work in the industry, within the representation and the imagery that we're putting out for the industry. So with my background being in marketing communications, and as I mentioned, this idea of knowledge, information, for me being really important, that we're helping our customer to understand that, helping people internally in the businesses to understand that, bringing all of this together is really where I feel that my skill set can help support what we do and drive positive change within the industry. So currently I am a consultant at Net-a-Porter, Mr. Porter. I was previously head of marketing there for 2 years and was kind of looking after our media, our organic social, our partnerships activities, and then layering in this work that I'm now continuing to do on what we call our people and planet strategy. So as hopefully is becoming clear, I'm very passionate about this area. So it was something that I wanted to make sure that we were driving from internal engagement perspective as well as a customer facing perspective. So I still work with Net-a-Porter and Mr. Porter on that remit, which is fantastic, where we look at what's our site journey. So how are we promoting circular services? What's our brand selection offering looking like? So as Net-a-Porter and Mr. Porter, we have the Net Sustain edit for Net-a-Porter, the Consciously Crafted edit for Mr. Porter, and they're both built on 3 attributes. So first one being lower impact materials, the second one being responsible craftsmanship, and the third being designed for circularity. So what we do is we have a large range of brands that we stock and sell on Net-a-Porter and Mr. Porter. So first, brands have to pass essentially a brand review. So we are vetting the brands to make sure that they are eligible to be part of our Net Sustain and Consciously Crafted edit. And then actually we badge products on a product level. So the individual products, we have to have that information shared with us by the brand to prove that it meets at least one of those 3 attributes. So it's actually a very rigorous way for us to be promoting a more considered edit on the site.
Yeah, I mean, because I'm talking to you now and thinking about this more deeply than I normally do, and realising that this, although it's got lofty claims, like it's a lot of admin. It really is a lot of paperwork, isn't it? This part of the industry.
It really, really is. And rightly so. There's been a lot of kind of legislation. The CMA have done a lot of work around clamping down on green claims. There's the Green Claims Code that came out because there were a lot of very loose claims about sustainability, about products being greener, coming out from brands that were filling customers with sentiment that they were making a better choice, when in actual fact that maybe wasn't being backed up by the data. Hence me kind of explaining the rigorous approach we take at Net-a-Porter and Mr. Porter.
And what are some brands that have made the cut with this conscious edit?
So Totem is a great brand that we stock, but Stella McCartney, another fantastic brand, Gucci. So we do have a lot of some very high profile brands that are doing fantastic work. And we want to be able to badge that on the site so that a customer who wants to make a more informed choice about what they're buying is able to see clearly that these are brands or individual products that actually are a more considered purchase.
Mm-hmm. So much progress has been made in the last few years, and we are where we are now. But there's a lot of stuff going on in the world at the moment that maybe puts some of some of that current position, even like under threat, maybe we'll take a step backwards. There's a lot of anti-diversity sentiment, especially within big tech, in America. How is this sort of affecting what you do now? Are you feeling an effect, or is that something that maybe will come down the line if things carry on the way they are?
Yes, it's obviously, personally I say it's very sad to see that sentiment coming through from very senior people in senior positions. I don't believe it's actually coming through from a customer sentiment perspective. And there's a fantastic report that the Unstereotype Alliance, which is a offshoot of the UN, that is brought together. It's a kind of combination of advertising companies and brands that come together to look at how can we break down stereotypes that we are portraying in advertising and build a more diverse, inclusive and equitable industry. And they released a report last year that was really fantastic because it proved the business case for inclusive advertising. It had nearly 400 brands take part, and they range from brands within the Diageo portfolio, the Bayer portfolio, the Mars portfolio, and they looked at their sales data over 3 years. And it was found that the brands that presented more inclusive advertising, that avoided stereotypes, actually saw stronger brand health metrics, which is great, of course, from a brand sentiment perspective. As a brand marketeer, that's what we always want to be able to see improve, is that we're actually connecting with our customer from a brand health perspective. Yeah. But what was fantastic to see was there was actually also commercial impact.
Sales data.
The sales data was shared. Exactly. Everybody likes strong sales data, which of course, we need healthy financial companies to have healthy, sustainable businesses. And it was shown that in the short term, so when these campaigns were live, there was a 3.5% increase in sales for brands that showed more inclusive advertising. And then over the 3-year data that they had, it actually increased to 16%. So over the long term, inclusive advertising showed stronger sales, stronger brand health metrics. And that for me is a fantastic, clear-cut case that shows that inclusivity is important for business. Customers want to see themselves represented. It very simple.
Sounds very obvious, and especially when backed up by the stats. But I guess and this, it's so obvious. The world is made up of diverse sets of people, many of whom have the spending power to buy a certain type of product, and why would they not want to see themselves represented? I sometimes can't understand how anyone could not see it that way.
Agreed. And I think, particularly also when we think of the luxury industry, that there is, there's focus markets. Of course, the US is a very large market for the luxury industry, but China, Japan, the Middle East, so, countries like the UAE, they're all very, very important luxury consumer bases. And they want to see themselves represented in the advertising imagery, in the ambassadors that you work with. It just makes common sense.
The stats are really clear, aren't they? But I suppose action is more important than words within the whole industry. And then I wonder, Vogue have been reporting quite extensively on the famed luxury slowdown. Yes. What's your take from a sustainability perspective on whether the sustainability initiatives or the lack of sustainability initiatives, has a part to play in any of that? Or is it just completely unrelated?
I don't think the luxury slowdown is a result of the lack of sustainability initiatives. But I actually think at the moment it kind of gets positioned, well, we can't think about sustainability because we just need to focus on making our business survive and our business is being profitable. But actually, a large part of sustainability is about operational efficiency. So of course it can have, there's a fantastic knock-on effect that it will reduce your environmental impact. But if we actually made less stuff and were able to sell it at a higher price point and focus on our margins, that is going to have a beneficial impact from a sustainability perspective and from an operational business perspective. So I think it was really interesting that actually Michael Kors, post-COVID, so in 2021, they announced that they'd cut their number of SKUs that they produce by 30% across the Capri Holdings brands, which is Michael Kors, Versace and Jimmy Choo. So they produced 30% less SKUs, but actually their revenues increased because it's not always about producing more to make more money. We can find ways as an industry to make things better, to be more focused with what we produce, and that in itself means we have to make less, which has a positive environmental impact. And I think with onset of AI and kind of tech, hopefully we can find ways to help us forecast better in terms of what we're producing, what we need to produce, to again just be more efficient as an industry as well.
Yeah, so less is really truly more, especially in luxury. I mean, by definition, it's rarity is one of the things that people like to have. So maybe being able to predict the demand, making sure that we never outsupply.
Yeah.
And that idea about increased margins starts to make me think as well about built to last, which luxury doesn't always feel in the last decade that it has been built to last, but it really is an industry that was built on that premise in the first place.
Absolutely.
So perhaps we might be able to see a little bit more of the built to last quality coming back.
Absolutely. I think so. Luxury has enjoyed such phenomenal growth over certainly the post-pandemic boom, but before that it was also, a very strong growth industry, which has come slightly as a result of producing / overproducing / overexposing, and sometimes reducing the quality of that production. And that does not build a sustainable business in the long term. And so, yes, I completely agree. As you say, for me, what I love about the luxury industry is the creativity, the provenance, the craftsmanship, the materials that go into making it. And those are really ingredients that would make a fantastic sustainable business in the long term. Hermès, of course, being, I think, the best example of how to manage a luxury brand based on those principles for the long term. And they are still seeing growth and success coming through for their business, whilst other sectors are perhaps, other brands are struggling and seeing that customers are questioning the value of buying their products, or just not looking to consistently buy as much stuff as they have bought in the past.
Yeah. And it's not fashion, but it's this narrative that we're talking about here is making me think about hotel chocolate, or maybe I just think about chocolate all the time. But, they really have made a huge effort to find, to have direct relations with the source. There's provenance, there's quality. You have to pay more. And probably when they started that business, people didn't believe anyone would pay more for chocolate, but, it's happening.
Yeah, and that's the power of storytelling, right? As luxury brand marketers, that's what we focus on doing. It is telling those stories. It's explaining to the customer why your good costs what it does, what you are buying into, and selling that dream. Because ultimately, the luxury industry is charging pricing premiums on products because you are being sold a dream, right? If it was just about buying a bag that could carry your stuff, you don't need to go to Hermès.
Perhaps even your choice of brands is part of your legacy that you leave. What do you think?
Yeah, and I think that this idea of luxury for the long term and as being an investment piece and something that you can give to your children or pass on to generations is something that's so central and core to the luxury industry that has maybe lost its messaging, positioning, or priority within some businesses. And with my sustainability hat on, is something that is absolutely essential for us as an industry to embrace and really focus on, to both have a more sustainable industry, but also to really safeguard the brand for the long term. And I think it is interesting to see how Pre-Loved has a role to play in that now, because we have spaces where you don't have to worry about passing on maybe to the next generation, don't have to wait that long. You can look at finding that value in the product in the more near term. So after you've owned something for a few years, hopefully, then you could look at selling it on through whatever Pre-Loved platform that is your platform of choice. And for me, that value that is kind of unlocked by being able to sell your product on really does, again, link back to the values of what it is to be a luxury brand, what it is to build a product that is why you pay so much for it up front, because you know that it holds its value in the long term.
Also, another non-fashion analogy, but I've been doing a lot of research recently about super yachts. And what I discovered is that some of the billionaires who own these massive super yachts, they actually rent them out. So people like Jay-Z and Beyonce come along and they, hire them for the Olympics or whatever. Is that happening in haute couture or, high-end fashion?
I mean, rental within fashion has really taken off, certainly in the UK, with a lot of peer-to-peer rental platforms. I think at the moment, rental is mostly linked to occasion wear. There was Cocoon, which was focused on handbags specifically, so luxury handbag rental subscription service. So I think, yes, there is this appetite, and this is what I'm excited to see. How can the industry innovate and shift to adapt more circular business models? It's interesting at the moment that it is more customer led, or it's not the main brands that are really developing their offerings in this space. It's kind of innovators, entrepreneurs who are coming up and seeing an opportunity. And then, of course, as I mentioned, kind of peer-to-peer customers being able to embrace that value that they hold in their wardrobes. And there's some fantastic examples that have been reported in the press from By Rotation, where some of their rotators are able to really, make significant sums of money off their wardrobes just by renting them out. So they still own the pieces, but then they're able to, as you say, rent it out for people to wear to a wedding, to enjoy on an occasion. And that for them is a great extra source of income.
I find that super interesting because I imagined that somebody owned the whole, wardrobe and was just renting it out as a business. But actually, they're utilising, it's the same sort of waste not, want not mentality of Uber and timeshare and Airbnb.
Absolutely.
That allow people to utilize the assets they have. If that's clothes as well, that's brilliant.
And I do think that Gen Z are holding different attitudes towards ownership. I myself personally still really love to own something, but I've seen, because I do some teaching at Ravensbourne and LCF, and often with the student projects that they share with them, the ideas that they come up with, they will be much more focused on this kind of sharing economy approach. So very open to rental, absolutely adore and adopt Vinted, pre-loved, all of these secondhand business models. So they really are much more comfortable with the idea of not owning something for forever and just having, as you say, a kind of timeshare approach to their engagement with fashion, which is quite refreshing.
It is very refreshing. You get to experience more.
Yes, exactly.
If you own less.
And this, for me, I do love this industry. I love fashion. I love, I want everyone to be able to wear what they want to wear, to embrace their creativity, being able to express themselves through clothes, right? That's why we love the industry. And so it's about finding solutions to help people to still do that whilst, whilst hopefully reducing our environmental impact.
But what's becoming clear to me talking to you now is that in itself is quite a difficult problem to solve. So it's no wonder the fashion brands didn't necessarily solve it themselves. It's taken these other sort of tech innovators to come along and make a business out of solving that problem.
Yeah.
And the fashion brands can now use it.
Yeah,
because it's the same with Harvey Nichols. The pre-loved scheme there is run by a separate
Reflaunt,
business. Yeah.
So we actually work with Reflaunt as well at Net-a-Porter and Mr. Porter. So we have a microsite. So it's a fully branded Net-a-Porter or Mr. Porter experience, but very clearly, we're very proud of our partnership with Reflaunt. So if you want to sell your items, they will help facilitate that. And then you get a credit note to use at Net-a-Porter and Mr. Porter with a 10% increase on the value of the product, or you can just have a bank transfer back to you if you just want to take the cash.
Now that's interesting, because then you can start to see how the whole thing becomes a loyalty scheme.
Absolutely. Yes. So again, I think, this idea of sustainability being really important for circular services is, of course, great, but it is a loyalty and retention opportunity for customers as well. So if brands can get their heads around how do we actually engage with this customer after they've just made that purchase and bought the item up front, how do we then help them to come back to sell it via us when they want to sell it pre-loved? How do we help them care and repair for it in the long term? These are all ways for us to keep connected to that customer, which is incredibly valuable. As we know from a marketing perspective, your existing customer base,
lifetime value, here we go.
Everything, yeah. And with the way, with the luxury slowdown that we're seeing, that existing customer base is more important than ever. So if you can find ways to connect with them And as I said, kind of reselling products, care and repairing services. They're fantastic ways to really add value to that customer's experience in a very natural way.
Ooh, amazing. So we touched a little bit on AI, but as we move into the kind of forward-thinking part of this podcast, how do you think that AI is already helping some of these initiatives? I mean, we've identified that it's very admin-y, and presumably AI can really help with the heavy lifting on that.
Yes, I think at the moment, in terms of being able to verify products and all of that information, it is very intensive, very admin intensive at the moment. There are companies out there like Compare Ethics who are able to kind of create databases for you, which, in the future, it would be incredible if there was actually a net sustain and consciously crafted that was just an industry standard, right? Because then instead of brands having to give us information and Selfridges information and Harrods information, there was just one platform where that information was uploaded to, and then there's that kind of level of consistency from a customer perspective as well. If there was a standardized accreditation or badging that they can just be very clear and understand about wherever they're shopping, that would also, of course, be hugely beneficial. So I think that AI, and tech can definitely find ways to help us with that admin ask and task, but then certainly, as mentioned before, in terms of helping us forecast production, merchandising, buying numbers, etc., AI already can be used for that and can really help to manage the kind of stock production levels that we're looking at.
But AI will famously hallucinate, so presumably there's still the need for someone to check its work in case it tells us we need 100,000 of these new Mulberry bags and we only actually needed 100.
Yes, exactly. There's always going to be the role for humans. And I will be interested actually to see how the AI models develop, because we've already seen with the rise of performance marketing, there is a lot more of, should we say, the functional approach to marketing, i.e. we mostly sell black bags, so we should just show our customers black bags. But the luxury industry is different. We show the silver, sparkly, or, avant-garde design because that builds the desire. It creates a standout for the brand. The customer then comes to buy the black version because that's more practical and it's what they'll use on an everyday basis. Will AI be able to understand the need and the role that those very, kind of runway exclusive design pieces that really capture the imagination and build that brand story and that creative narrative whilst meeting the commercial objectives? It'll be interesting to see how those two pieces come into play.
It is quite illogical, the way that luxury can work. And it's making me think, Rory Sutherland, the CEO of Ogilvy, has written a book called Alchemy, the surprising power of things that don't make sense.
Yes.
And it really does, because it's like pattern interruption, in psychology. So just doing something surprising, completely outlandish, a little bit over the top, perhaps, to get the attention, and then sort of follow through with all of the sensible options as the customer gets nearer to the sale.
Yeah, it's already been a point of debate amongst brand marketeers and performance marketeers, because, of course, it does help to chase people around the internet with products that they've looked at, but you also want to promote the dream, the brand image to them, across your advertising as well. So what is this kind of push-pull factor of the pull of building the brand, of creating that dream, the push of specific products that you think they're more likely to buy? Yeah. That tension and that kind of balance is will be interesting to see how that kind of plays out long term. Yes. With the slowdown in luxury already, I feel that there's a return to understanding the importance of brand and understanding the role it has to play in selling that dream, because the kind of standout and differentiation you'll get for the customer when it's a more crowded market will rely entirely on that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm imagining, AI making all social media managers' jobs everywhere much easier, but not necessarily the creative department. It's think of a good brand collaboration that made no sense and yet was really viral. I just don't know if an AI could really come up with these things. What was it? Which brand was it that did the KFC collaboration with a chicken bag?
Chicken bag? Yeah. Not sure I've seen that one.
That one was bonkers.
But yeah, I mean, just look at what Demna did with Balenciaga, Simpsons premiere collection, a crisp packet bag, all these types of things. As you say, it's will AI know how to do that? And I don't personally believe that should be AI's role, right? We are humans. We should be taking on those roles and challenges and creative opportunities. It'd be great if AI could help with the very admin heavy tasks that would be, hugely beneficial to be automated.
Mm. And other than AI, what else is happening? What else do you predict for the industry? What direction do you think everything's going? It could be social, tech, economic, political.
No, I think that with the slowdown that's being seen across luxury, that brands are going to continue to double down and focus on that top tier luxury customer, really building the brand storytelling, the brand value into that. And how do you engage with that customer who hopefully is already a loyal customer, but certainly probably already has a lot of product? It's by offering them exclusives. It's by offering them personalization. It's by offering them experiences as well. So how do we actually, from a product perspective, I predict that the industry will focus on hopefully producing less, but certainly producing more special pieces that maybe it's made to order, maybe it's personalized, so it's very specific to them. And then looking at how they can engage and keep that customer loyal from an experiential perspective. So bringing them into whether it's experiencing the craftsmanship of the product or community side of things. So Miu Miu already does like a book club, finding ways to bring the brand to life and bring very special experiences to those luxury customers. Mm-hmm. And then the other part of it, because of course there's not only the ultra high net worth individuals that the luxury audience, luxury brands need to court, but how can they actually embrace things like pre-loved resale, the opportunity, the commercial opportunity of those products that's already out there. It's already being proven that there is this desire for pre-loved. So if brands can kind of step into that space to continue to have a share of the commercial sales that are being made off their pre-loved products, I think that will be, a really fantastic way for them to look at more circular services and building that into the value of the business long term. Mulberry, for example, already has the Mulberry Exchange program where they've been doing exactly that. You can sell your bags pre-loved back to Mulberry. It's funny, when I worked there back in 2012, we've always had a care and repair service. They have manufacturing factories in the UK, so it made perfect sense that you would bring your product back to us, we would fix it for you, there'd be a charge for that, and then it gets returned to the customer, because Mulberry bags have been loved for 20 years maybe already, and that special bag, the emotional connection you have to that bag is hugely valuable to the customer. So as I mentioned, I feel like so many of these innovations are things that luxury brands should maybe have been doing, but it's just turning them into more of a visible service and creating the broader understanding that they're available.
Yeah. So we've talked about all sorts today, and we've done, your backstory and where the industry is now and predictions for the future. Out of this whole conversation, if there was one thing you can leave the audience with, and there will be some luxury marketers in the audience, how would you kind of bring it all into a nutshell?
So we've talked so much about fashion and what a fantastic, exciting industry it is. It's an industry that we all take part in every day. We all wear clothes. So I would really love everyone to think about their wardrobes, celebrating making the most of what's already in it. And of course, if you're going to buy something new or pre-loved, just make more considered choices around what you're shopping.
Perfect. And let's do an extra one. So that was very much from a consumer's point of view, which is great. And I'm going to do as you say. What about from a luxury marketer's point of view? What would you leave the luxury marketers with, in the sense of what could they do for their brand, whether it be fashion or not, to resonate with their consumer?
So for the luxury marketers out there, I would ask you to look at what your company is doing from a CSR perspective and find ways to bring that to life for your customer. I think it's super important, whether it is in the details of your sustainability pages on the website, to maybe more customer-facing messaging on social, through campaigns on your websites. Be informed, know what your company is doing, encourage them to do better, and celebrate where they are doing good things.
Perfect. Thank you so much for joining us. I've really enjoyed this conversation. I've learned all kinds of new things as well, and not least some new places to go and get some pre-loved things.
Fantastic.
This has been the Giant Leap podcast in conversation with Kay Carmichael.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome.